So now I think we can start working on some of the peripheral elements, and I want to start with that snare drum, because the snare is really what's pulling the inside rhythm, that dun, 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 right? I want that to come out because that's the bounce of the record, and the snare is really helping that along. So what I need to do is I need to emphasize the transient of the snare. That's the real rhythmic cue. And to do that, I'm going to use the FG Bomber. And it takes a little bit of tweaking to get this exactly right. But let's solo the snare up real quick. I want that leading edge to pop forward a little bit. I don't need it to smear so much into that like white noisy release of the snare. So my plan is to emphasize the attack and then to brighten it up. So basically, if I just tried to brighten it right now, that like release of it, that white noise tone that's coming off of the snare, is going to fly too forward. And I can show that right now pretty easily. Right, it's like this like hiss is coming off of the back end of the snare. So I want to kind of ameliorate that a little bit by emphasizing just the front end. So to do that, I'm going to switch this over to tight, and I'm going to sort of play with the intensity and the drive to get exactly the degree of transient that I want. I'll start by turning the intensity all the way up and then finding the sweet spot for the drive. I mean, you can hear how that immediately changes the dynamic, right? Now we have all attack and like very little sustain comparatively. Right, so now we've really effectively emphasized the attack of the snare. So all I did there was I turned the intensity up, I found where the drive was giving me the right sort of ratio between attack and release, and then fine-tuned it with the intensity, and then matched the output. So it's not really as complicated as it might have seemed, or it's not that crazy actually. It just takes a second to get used to what you're hearing. So the question is, do I want the 12K shelf boost or the 7.2K bell boost? I think I like the 7.2. That I think is doing a little bit more for me. The shelf is a little bit too smooth. I mean, the FGN is a fairly aggressive equalizer in general, so neither of them are particularly bad choices, but I don't really need the like super top end of this snare. I really need just like the higher part of the treble range. It might even be worth trying like something a little bit lower, like 6K. That's it right there. Cool. So let's hear that in the context of the mix.
Taking over, we're catching vibes. Pulling me.
Here's how we started.
Taking over, we're catching vibes. Pulling me closer, baby, I'm magnetized. So used to dodging feelings, but this feels nice.
Right, huge difference. So I also want to fine tune the low end of the snare now that it's a little bit more present. That's probably about right. It sounded like there was a little bit of excess kind of like low end. The low end is important because that's where the weight of the snare is, but it's not as important as like the kick drum.